Hello, this is b.cortez, and I'm going to be going over the FIE for Dr. Cephas class for the Fall Practicum SPED 6943 class. So I went over the FIE in a mock parent interview in the previous video, and this is just going over the FIE and why I chose the particular test that I did. So we're looking at Victoria. She is in grade 3, and her reason for referral, she was is a current student in 3rd grade. She's 8 years old. She's in the bilingual program. Her parents are concerned about her reading proficiency. She comprehends when materials are read aloud, but difficulty reading independently. So the parents and teachers were concerned about letter reversals or spelling. And so she was referred for testing to help with her, just to see if there was a concern and to see if she might have an eligibility. And let's see here, that changed. There we go. So testing to see if she qualifies for or has an eligibility for a disability because of the concerns they have, and they despite reading interventions and RTI and that sort of thing, she has had MTS support and she is still struggling. So we did go ahead and look at some different tools and strategies that were used to support her. And we, of course, had to get parent information, records from the school, teacher and student teacher information about the student, the district benchmarks and informal data from the teachers, like I said, with the documentation from the MTSS team and her RTI. And I did observe her in the classroom, and I chose to use the WISC 5, the Woodcock-Johnson 4, and the CTOP and the b.cort. And so we started out by looking, of course, at her background information with the parents. She lives with both parents, mother and father. She has a sibling, and the primary language spoken at home was English, which we found out through the home language survey, which we had to do. There was no significant concerns about environmental changes or socioeconomic. We did a hearing and vision, and there was no issues there. So we were able to rule out exclusionary factors. But as far as what the parents said about Victoria, she does talk a lot at times, and that contributes to her paying attention. And but their main concern is the reading and the proficiency level. So she does have the support of home, and she is a normal child that likes to do skateboarding and take walks, and they do have dinner together. So there were not concerns there. Overall, they said she is a sweet girl and she basically follows directions, and she's willing to help. So no behavior concerns. Attendance is fine. And adaptive behavior we did look at, and she's able to communicate. She's able to do her daily life skills. So there was no issues there. As far as the teacher input, the teachers also did not have any behavior concerns, and she will ask for help when needed, but they are also concerned about her reading difficulty. And they do believe that she's aware of her weaknesses, so she does not want her peers to know that, so she's trying to hide it. But we are concerned about that, so we want to get her the help that she needs to assist her so that she can be on grade level. So we looked at her academic and achievement data, and we did look at the benchmark and the universal screeners. So we did realize, according to the teachers, that she was consistently below grade level in reading overall across the board. So it looks like she's at risk. She's not making adequate progress. She's not on grade level, even with the supports of the MTSS team and the RTI. So if we can look at the projections for a star, it looks like she is not going to meet the standards. So again, we looked at the MAP scores, and she did have difficulties in the basic reading and reading comprehension. So her score was 164. It indicates some major deficits. And her teacher also said that it affects her academic vocabulary, and it's hard for her to understand a text that when she reads independently also. So she has difficulty using vocabulary to construct her own ideas, to get meaning from the print, and this is going to be reflected in standardized assessments. So, you know, they have areas of oral reading and spelling, or actually word attack, spelling, letter word identification. So that's going to be affected in that. And then when I observed her in the classroom, it was the bilingual classroom, and she was smiling, she was paying attention, she was joining her peers. They were doing a brain pop video, and after the video, the students were to act out, but while the others read. And so she did demonstrate some deficits in reading. She did not read fluently. She needed help from the teacher. Even though she was trying to be involved, you could tell she was struggling. So she did try to raise her hand, and she got along great with her peers, but there was some obvious difficulty in reading. So her testing behavior was fine. We established rapport quickly. She did not have any issues. We had a conversation. She's cooperative. So she really wanted to do well, and she did put forth her best effort. And so that was good to see. And then as far as her intellectual development, we looked at, we chose the norm reference test to look at cognitive abilities, and then we were going to look at her phonological skills also. And that's why we chose the CTOP, and then of course the b.cort to look at the possibility of dyslexia. So we went with for the cognitive abilities, we went with the Woodcock-Johnson 4, and then the WISC 5. And then of course we are going to compare it or use it and analyze it along with the other informal data, so that we could get a preponderance of data and make a comprehensive assessment and use professional judgment according to like the CSEP model. So the tests were administered according to the scoring that the publisher had instructed. And we were looking for strengths and weaknesses, and we did find them, and they were consistent with a student that has a SLD or a possible learning disability. But let's go over that right now. So to determine if Victoria had an SLD, we would need to find the strengths and weaknesses, and we did find that. So let's take a look here at her cognitive functioning under the WISC 5. So if we want to look at her verbal comprehension, it was average. Her visual spatial were average, and those we used the 95% confidence interval in those. So her composite scores were 106.94 average. And if the next one is the fluid reasoning. So right there we could see she had a low average, and she dropped down to between a 79 and 93, and the composite score was 85. So that was a red flag there, that an unexpected low average when everything else was average to even high average. So the full scale IQ did come out as a 98, which is the intervals somewhere between 92 and 104 is her average. So her processing speed was high average, her working memory average. So we see that several of those were average to high average. And then of course the weakness, we had an unexpected weakness in fluid reasoning that dropped her down to a low average. So the subtests administered, once again, we're going to see a little bit more detailed here. Her verbal similarities, high average. Her standard score, 110. It was excellent. And then we dropped way down to the bottom. The processing speed of her coding was also 110, high average. Those look fantastic. And then the meat of it, she had 4 of them that were average. That was her working memory, fluid reasoning, visual, spatial, and comprehension. But if we take a look at her fluid reasoning, one of them, the figure weights, the standard score was only 85, and that's where that low average comes in. So once again, we have the weakness among all these strengths that is unexpected with that figure weights right there was the low average. So let's go ahead and take a look at the C-top. So parents were concerned about her reading comprehension, her spelling, her phonological awareness. The teachers were also, so that's why I chose C-top, so we could look at her phonological awareness. And we can see right off the bat that under her phonological awareness, her standard score was only 73. So that's poor, and everything else was low. She was below average elision, poor blending words, poor phoneme isolation. Then if we look at her phonological memory, also poor and poor. And then the non-word was below average with the 85. And then, of course, the bottom is her strengths. So her rapid symbolic naming, she was able to achieve average. So therein, again, we have our average, our strengths, so to speak. And then we have the below average to poor. So there is our pattern of strengths and weaknesses right there in the C-top. So we also looked at the achievement in the Woodcock-Johnson 4. So if we want to take a closer look at that, most at first glance, average. Letter word identification, 98. Her highest one, word attack, was 110. And if we see oral reading, she was able to score average. Calculation, apply problems, writing, sample, spelling. She was able to make an average score, but our concern right there is that passage comprehension was only a 75, so that put her at the below average range. So therein again is our unexpected low score when that shows the pattern of weakness when she has the other subtests that are showing a strength. So when we took a look at that, we knew that was the red flag, and those are typically markers for someone that has dyslexia, when they have the average scores on some of those, and then the unexpected below average. So then we also chose to go ahead and issue or administer the b.cort, the oral reading test, to get a good idea on her reading and comprehension, which there was a concern about that. So we can see right now that her descriptives on her tests were poor to below average, and that is definitely not grade level. That's hindering her learning. That may be a reason where she is not on grade level. So she's having difficulties in oral reading fluency, oral reading rate, oral reading accuracy, and then of course also the reading comprehension. So that is below average, and we know that reading comprehension, if a student tends to struggle in that, that can flow across to other subjects. So it can definitely affect math for reading comprehension, to be able to figure out the questions to before you even get to the computation, to be able to read the word problem and solve those word problems. That reading comprehension really could affect her scores. So we, after analyzing and looking at the data, it really shows that Victoria's weaknesses was in certain elements of reading, And we know that to be a skilled reader and to stay on those grade level expectations that we want her to, the student is going to need to be able to have be proficient in phonological awareness. She's going to need to be able to recognize words quickly. She's going to need to be able to code, and she's going to be able to need to do both of those quickly and fluently, and then to also comprehend what she reads. So we know that those affect that, and so Victoria, received the full scale IQ rating that was average on the WISC of a 98. About 50% or so. The concern is her intellectual development, and that would be considered a weakness with her below average and poor scores on the others. So in looking in that, her results actually did indicate the pattern of strength and weakness in the areas related to reading. So the verbal comprehension test, it showed the standard score was 106, and the fluid reasoning index measured Victoria's logical thinking and her ability to use reasoning to apply to rules. Her score on that, the FRI, it was in the low average. She scored an 85 in that. So again, that was a concern with a pattern where she has some strengths, and then right there she had a weakness. So Victoria's fluid reasoning skills, was one of her weaker areas of performance. And so we're hoping that she can continue to develop in that with some specialized instruction. So we know that those students who do get interventions, and when they're targeted interventions, it can assist them in doing better with their logical thinking skills. So we looked at the reading fluency also. So reading fluency is that ability to, of course, to read with automaticity, accuracy, and prosody. And we know that her Victoria's reading fluency skills depend on the proficiency in the rate and accuracy. And her she scored below average to poor on those. So the test measured below average. She got a standard score of 80, and an accuracy was 75. So in the b.cort, those indicates that she's going to have some challenging times with her reading. When she's doing her reading task, it's going to present a challenge. So we know that could be difficult for her. And her CTOP scores were, the poor range for phonological awareness was 73, and her phonological memory were 76. So those are typically an underlying cause for dyslexia. So we want to definitely get her some intervention and qualify her. She is going to need that dyslexia intervention. And one more thing, the reading comprehension, so that when she reads something, is she understanding what she's reading? It's the basic reading skills, the fluency, oral language skills. So that also is contributing to her deficit. And when we administered the subtest of the passage comprehension, she did get a 75. So that is below average also. So all those together, once we take the formal data and we look at the informal data and the formal data. So we take the MAP scores and her RTI, her intervention, and we look at what the MTS team was doing, and then we compare it and analyze it with these formal testing scores. We know that she has a weakness. She was showing the pattern of strengths and weakness, and her performance relative to her overall intellectual ability is showing that there's an unexpected weakness there. So that was our main concern after looking at all the data, the dyslexia screeners and the MAP scores. So once we looked at that, we could tell that that Victoria would qualify for a student with specific learning disability, and within that, it would we would look at her, or we would include the basic reading comprehension as an eligible disability, and it would have with the condition of dyslexia. So once again, we had to rule out the exclusionary factors, which we did. So she did not have any visual, hearing, or motor disabilities. There's not an evidence of an intellectual disability or emotional disturbance or socioeconomic disadvantages. Her language skills were developed. She has had appropriate instruction in all the core subjects, and she has a supportive home environment and a supportive school environment. So those particular things do not interfere with her academic success. And of course, Victoria also can access general education without the use of assistive technology. We did not feel she needed that. We looked at everything from communication to her daily living skills, and so that was not necessary. She's able to access all those things. And so once we looked at that, we came up with a basic impact statement for Victoria. And we decided that Victoria is currently not meeting grade level standards in 3rd grade. So on her benchmark assessment, she demonstrated several academic abilities, but she also exhibited challenges with her reading comprehension. She demonstrated difficulties in understanding and interpreting written text, which can manifest in main ideas, in making inferences and recalling facts. So her challenges can impede her completing assignments with spelling, grammar, and writing related activities. So the student's lack of academic progress is hindering her ability to keep pace with curriculum and to be able to learn more advanced skills in reading. So with that, we did have some basic recommendations that we came up with. So Victoria is going to need explicit and systematic instruction. This will improve her reading skills and comprehension. She would benefit from audiobooks and speech-to-text software. The teacher would check for understanding when independent work begins. That would help Victoria. And they would need to provide repeated instruction and to remind her for clarification. And then, of course, graphic organizers are a great tool, and we recommend that. Also, word banks to support her reading deficits. So those are just some basic recommendations. We, of course, can, when we go to make the IEP with the ARD committee, we can add more accommodations if we need to, but those were the basic recommendations for now. For Victoria to begin to be successful and try to get her back on grade level. So with all that, we have to look at the, just to make sure, we have to, in the state of Texas, to meet the criteria for SLD, the 4 conditions must be met. And so let's take a look at those real quick. So the student must provide, or they must be provided with learning experiences and instructions that are appropriate and for the student's age, and in which the standards are not achieved adequately. But Victoria has been provided with appropriate instruction this school year and in the prior school years, according to the teachers and parents in her school records. And so we looked at the data across the board, and it indicates the rest of the class on multiple measurements performed at much higher rates. So she is in an environment that is conducive to learning, and she is still struggling, so that's a concern. Number 2, students receive appropriate instruction in reading and math, evidenced by data-based documentation and assessments. And Victoria has been monitored. Her progress has been monitored through the school year, as evidenced by reports and grades and map data and district benchmarks. So she has had the opportunity to learn. And then we did rule out exclusionary factors. We had to look at those. They were considered and they were ruled out. And then number 4, does the student exhibit a pattern of strengths and weaknesses in performance, in achievement, or both? In performance or achievement, or both, according to state or grade level standards. And if so, then they are considered to be eligible for an SLD. So Victoria did exhibit that in both performance and achievements. So her achievement, again, in the word attack and a weakness in passage comprehension and non-word repetition, it's going to impact her ability to meet grade level standards. So we know she showed some strengths in rapid symbolic naming, but then the weakness in reading, rate, and accuracy. So Victoria does have an SLD in reading. And then, of course, we had to look at the dyslexia considerations also. So was she having difficulty with accurate or fluent word reading? Yes, she was. Did she have poor spelling skills? Yes. And did she have poor decoding skills? Yes. So do these difficulties result from a deficit in phonological component of language? Yes, they do. And are these difficulties unexpected for the student's age in relation to her abilities in the classroom? Yes, they did. So according to all this information, the student Victoria does meet eligibility requirement, and she also would need a specialized instruction. So next, of course, we'd have to meet with the ARD, and they would consider the FIE, and then they would make the IEP looking at her least restrictive environment, and all those decisions would be finalized to the ARD committee. And that is it.